Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa usalli wa usallam ala Sayyid al-Awwaleen wal Akhirin Nabiyyina Muhammadan wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. All praise are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be showered upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, the master of the first and the last, and upon his family, his companions, and all those who call to his way and establish his sunnah to the day of judgment. As to what follows, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, this is another chance for us to come together to provide a type of corner, a new Muslim corner, a physical space and also a mental space, a spiritual space for those who have recently embraced Islam. And many times the people who are embracing Islam don't have the opportunity to ask certain questions. And they are usually bombarded with a lot of information. People will tell them, don't do this and don't do that. So you get like 25 do's and don'ts. And without understanding the spirit, of Islam itself, and without having the chance to really develop within Islam. And sometimes the questions that we may ask seem to be ignorant, foolish questions, but they're not. Whatever is bothering you, this is a chance for you to ask that question. I can't guarantee that I have the answer, but if I don't, inshallah, I will try to find the answer. The only type of question, or types of question that I cannot go into, what we do not hear, is like political questions. You want to know the state of the Muslim world and what is happening here or there. This is not a politics class. This is really to deal with the foundations of Islam itself and to make it available to Muslims, not only who have newly embraced Islam, but also those who are reviving their faith. And really, this information that we're giving is something that all Muslims should be reviewing constantly, because it is of critical importance. And as our great scholar Sidi Abdurrahman al-Akhdari, in his book on ibadat, on worship, great North African scholar, he started off by saying, what is required of a new Muslim? And the key point is that that person should correct and authenticate their faith. Correct and authenticate faith. And that means that everybody has a faith, everybody has some sort of beliefs about life and death, where we are going. But are they the correct ones? Are they authentic? Or is it just something based on culture and superstition? So this class is going through the veils of superstition and culture to try to go to the essence of what Islam is. And we recognized that the key part of Islam, the key essence of entering into Islam, is the kalima, and that is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is, there is no God but Allah, or nothing worthy of worship except Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Peace be upon him. That's the basis. So you could call it Tawheed and Risala. So that is the oneness of Allah and the prophethood. So once you have that, and you state that, it doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter what class you are, what language you speak, what form of religion that you have, when you state that sincerely, you have entered into the fold of Islam. And so we need to understand, this basis, the basis of our faith, that oneness, and to protect ourselves from losing that purity of the oneness of Allah. And so we found out that this Tawheed, this belief in one God, this is the main description of a Muslim. It is not, Muslims are not one racial group. They are not one linguistic group. As a matter of fact, we understand that prophets and messengers came to every nation and every tribe. And in traveling to different parts of the world, in China, I spoke to a Chinese scholar, and he said that they have a concept in ancient times called Shang Ti. and Shang Ti meant the Great Spirit. So that concept was there in China in ancient times. It's in all parts of the world. I remember being on a radio program in Scotland, and we were discussing Tawheed and prophets, and the brother who was with me spoke that historically, before the time of Christ, that there are records of a person coming into the northern part of the British Isles, the United Kingdom, to the northern part, teaching the oneness of God. So that person who came before Prophet Muhammad ﷺ could very well have been one of the prophets, because Allah sent prophets and messengers to every nation, regardless of where they live. And we'll be studying more about the prophets and the messengers that we know about for sure. But the key thing is that this oneness of Allah is complemented with prophethood, in that Allah sent messengers and a final messenger to complete the message. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is considered to be the finality of prophets, not the only prophet of Islam. So when we say the word Islam, we're talking about the belief in one God. And that's really important to try to understand how Islam impacted on people in different parts of the world, and to put it into our own lives. So we recognized the critical nature of believing in one God. And we found out that the opposite of Tawheed, monotheism, is shirk, and that is polytheism, associating partners with Allah. And so a person who is mushrik or a polytheist, they believe in a creator, but they also try to go through created things to get to the creator. And so that's like a partnership. And the most famous way of going to this partnership probably is the Trinity. That's the one that's known by people, especially in the Western world. And we recognize that Allah has said clearly that He would forgive all sins in this life. In the next life, the only sin which is unforgivable is shirk, and that is polytheism. And that is established in the Quran itself, how dangerous shirk is, that a person needs to try in the best possible way not to die in polytheism. But we need to understand what polytheism is. And the classical way, the classical concept of polytheism is somebody bowing down to an idol. But there are different forms of shirk. And we are studying the major forms of shirk in order that we can protect ourselves and we can begin to complete and to purify, our belief in one God. And we reached a very important section, and that is Bab as-Siha. That is the section on magic. And when we look at magic itself, we are talking about all types of sorcery, witchcraft, divination, necromancy. In other words, when you're communicating with the dead, all types of forms like this. So sihr is a big word. And magic is used in a lot of different ways. Sometimes they say innocent magic. And then even we were discussing, should we say black magic or white magic? Right? But then again, that's a play on words. Because in Western countries, black generally means something negative. So if I said black magic, that would be evil magic. But if I said white magic, then that would mean good magic, right? Innocent magic. So this is how we use it in our language, right? And so really it's not black or white. It's magic itself. Okay? And that's important because we need to understand that magic, from our understanding, the Quranic understanding, it really began in an organized form in a place called Babel. And Babel we know as Babylon. That's in ancient Iraq. And it was two angels, Harut and Marut. And we find it in the second chapter, verse 101 to 102. This is where this magic came in. And to look at the actual verses itself, that this is the translation of the second chapter, where Allah is saying, and they followed what the devils chanted of sorcery in the reign of Suleiman. That means Prophet Solomon. And Suleiman was not an unbeliever, but the devils disbelieved. They taught men sorcery and such things as came down to the two angels at Babel, Harut and Marut. So you can see it right there. Because Prophet Suleiman had so much power. He was able to do things like speak with birds and communicate with the jinn and whatnot. And so people thought that this is magic. Like he must be a master magician. And you'll find that's mentioned even in the Bible and other places. These accusations that came against Suleiman. But the Quran absolves him. And it says clearly he was not an unbeliever. So his ability to talk to the jinn, the creatures of smokeless fire, that normally is done through the secret societies of magic. But in the case of Suleiman alayhi salam, he had this ability. And the Quran shows clearly he was not an unbeliever. But the evil ones were. The people who taught this magic that came in Babel. So in the Quran, it is Babel. It's literally in the Quran itself, which is Babylon. And the verse continues, and it said, yet these two taught no man until they had said, surely we are only a trial. Therefore do not disbelieve. Do not be a disbeliever. Because you would say, like, what would an angel, which angels basically are good, they're not devils. What would the angel be teaching magic? So they were commanded by the Creator to do this. And so they taught these magical systems. But every time they did it, they said, this is a test. In other words, this knowledge is here, but you're being tested now. So do not become a disbeliever. Okay? The Quran continues, even then people learned from these two magic by which they might cause a separation between a man and his wife. And they cannot hurt with it anyone except with Allah's permission. And they learned what harmed them and did not profit them. And certainly they knew that buyers of magic would have no share in the happiness of the hereafter, and evil was the price for which they sold their souls, if they but knew. So this is showing here now magic, and one of the worst forms of magic is breaking up families, the separation of husband and wife. So you can see now the state that we're living in today, especially in the Western countries. Okay, there's things going on here that are very strange, and the more you understand magic and the cures to it, you can understand what's happening, because divorce is on the rise, and in some places people don't even want to get married. So this is the breakup of society. If you don't have stable families, you have no stable society. And that is the object of the shaitan, of the devil. It's to break up our societies. Okay? So now, what are the types of magic? There are forms of different spells, casting spells. And that will vary from society to society. And these magic cults, these magical groups that literally take people, induct them into their group, and then teach them its knowledge. It's literally knowledge. And you can go degrees within the knowledge of magic itself. So in the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there were women who used to blow in knots as a way of casting spells. That's called nafathati fil uqad. Okay? So this is one way, but that's basically casting spells. Another form is summoning the jinn. So you summon the jinn to perform acts of good or evil. So you try to get control of these forces, to gain control of the forces. And that's basically what these magical societies are doing. This is like the highest level of magic, or you could say the lowest. It's the jinn. That's the worst form. There's another form that we'll look into with more detail, and that is fortune telling, which falls under that. And one of the most dangerous forms of magic is also, and this is connected with the jinn, both of these are, that is possession. So that is where a person is possessed. And that's literally where the jinni, enters into the body of the person. And they are actually possessed. Okay, so these are different forms, and there are many different types. We want to look at these major forms. Now, just in general, to understand the Islamic position right away, that magic is considered to be disbelief. And sometimes shirk, and sometimes it's considered to be shirk as well. But really, these are all, of course, the major sins. And this is by the consensus of the scholars. Right? And the punishment in Islamic law is that we take it really serious. So in the same way, in some countries, you have capital punishment. Everybody has forms of capital punishment for different things. For us, the performing magic is actually capital punishment. And that is, of course, there's a whole process. The person, because there's courts. We don't have vigilantes. There's courts. So the person who's doing this magic, and we'll see what the different types are, they are brought to the court. They are asked to stop and to repent. And then they're let go. And then the second time they're asked to repent, they're let go. The third time they're asked to repent. If they continue after that, then this is where capital punishment could be applied. And it doesn't always apply in the societies itself. Okay? And that's a point of discussion if anybody wants to. Now, in terms of the possession, because again, like we say, magic there's light forms and there's heavy forms, but possession is really one of the heavy forms with the jinn. It's not everybody even who communicates with the jinn who actually is into this possession thing. And so this is, to get it out, is called exorcism. This is nushra. And there are actually Muslims who, amongst the ulama, amongst the scholars, who would dedicate themselves to exorcism, exorcists. And as I was saying last week, amongst the Christians, there are exorcists in the Catholic faith. The other forms of Christianity don't really do it anymore. It's being phased out. And because secularism is so powerful in the Western countries, so they considered anything to do with the minds or whatever, they say that's it's a mental illness. So you go into psychiatry and whatever. But there are cases, I've run into cases where the person's in a prison cell and just banging his head on the wall and talking in voices and doing crazy things. And that the Protestants will not touch it. They just give him drugs. It's considered, put him in a straitjacket. It's only the Catholics, if they can find certain signs, that they will actually try to take it out. And one might say, okay, what does it have to do with Islam? But Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there were actually cases of this. There is one case where he was in a caravan, and along the side of the road, the family brought their son. And they said, "O Messenger of Allah, our son has been possessed." And so according to this tradition, then he laid the boy down and he read from the Quran, and then he hit him real hot in his chest. Right? He did certain thing in the chest and read the Quran, and in order to extract it. So it's actually a science of how to extract it. But it's not an easy one. And they say that the people who perform exorcisms, they have a very difficult life. And most of the time, the exorcists are not married. They're usually a very humble, single man who stays by himself making dhikrullah, remembrance of Allah all the time. Because the problem is, if you take it out, it's going for your family. So if you took that thing out, it's going for your wife next. Okay, or your children. It'll go for your children as a revenge, right? So therefore, the exorcists generally do not, they don't take it out. And I ran across some cases, Allah knows best. There was a brother, a Cuban brother, and he was a really powerful Muslim. And he was so powerful before he accepted Islam, like he swam from Cuba to Jamaica because he wanted to, his freedom or whatever. He swam from Cuba to Jamaica. So he's a really strong person. And he joined this group called the Jamaat Tabligh, who traveled all around the place. And he ended up in India. And he went to a madrasa. And they liked him a lot because he was a really strong student. And they took him to an exorcist. So he literally was with us when I was living in Jamaica. And he told us what happened to him. And he said that he went to the exorcist, and that person was performing extractions. And on one case, the person, was talking in tongues and whatever, and so they read the Quran and what he said was like a terrible smell that was coming, and something came out, and they actually they got it into a bottle, and then they capped the bottle with Quranic writings and things like that, and they buried it. Okay, so that he witnessed that, live, actually, what it was, and but it was a really frightening thing. And a friend of mine, Abdullah Hakim, he's still alive in California, and he was a student in Medina. And you would think that the Islamic University of Medina, because they're very strong on Aqidah, right? So you would think that they have nothing to do with magic or anything like this. But no, this is a reality. And there was one scholar, Sheikh Ali Mushrif, and he was known for exorcism. And so he would teach his classes in the College of Sharia. And he would go home and wash up and take his tea or lunch or whatever. And in his basement he had beds, like a doctor's office. And the people were actually in there and they're laying in the beds. So he would go down to the beds, and my friend got permission to be with him. So, and this is live testimony. So he went down, and generally, he would put his hand on the person's neck and read, certain chapters of the Quran, trying to get it out. And if the person is really strong, if you don't want it to be there, and you fight back, then he can help you. But if you don't fight back, then he has difficulties doing it. So in most cases, he gets it out, whatever. And he said it was strange because there was one case where he was speaking to this jinni, because the person who's possessed talks in tongues. They'll talk to you in another voice. And that person said to the sheikh, he said, "I'm an imam of the jinn." So he said, "What are you doing inside of this person?" Now, you ask yourself, how can it be an imam of the jinn, right? Because there are good jinn and bad. There's actually good jinns. All of the jinn are not evil. There's a chapter in the Quran called Surah Al-Jinn. It's a chapter of the Quran. And in this chapter, the Prophet ﷺ, was traveling, from Taif. He was traveling along with Zayd, and he actually came across a company of jinn. And Taif is a mountainous place. So when you're going down Taif toward Mecca and Jeddah, so there's a lot of caves and whatnot, so the jinn liked this. So he came to the company of the jinn, and the Quran was revealed. And the Quran was revealed to the jinn, speaking directly to them. and they believed. So this set of the jinn actually became Muslim. So there are good jinn and there are evil. And the Prophet ﷺ said, everybody has a qareen around them. You have a type of jinni that comes around you. It's called qareen. Some people can hear voices in their head and whatever, and dreams and things. So this force is around you. He said, every human being, everybody's got this. So then they said, Ya Rasulullah, what about you? Do you have one? Because he allowed them to ask questions, right? So he said, do you have one of these jinn around? He said, yes, I do. But my jinni accepted Islam. So his jinni is a Muslim, right? So he doesn't have a problem, but ours is not. Right? So that's why all the purifications that you're doing, are for a purpose. The dhikrs that you're doing, the halal food you're eating, everything like that is for a purpose. And so nushra is a reality. But we don't go to somebody who uses magic to get magic out. We don't do that. We will go to somebody who is specialized in this. There are very few people who actually do this now. And people used to come to me before in the Jami Mosque and say, I don't do this. I don't do this. I have a family and I'm not, go to this brother there and not me. Because I don't want the jinns coming back to me. And the problem we have is we have superstition in us. One time the brother came to me and he said, Brother Abdullah, I have these headaches, pains in my head, this jinni in my head. Get it out. And I said, okay, brother, calm down. And I said, okay, how many jobs do you have? And he said, I have 2 jobs. I'm working constantly. And I said, okay, have you ever heard of the word stress? Right. Stress, right? You need to first quit one of those jobs. You got to go to a doctor. Okay, don't blame everything on the jinn. Because if something inhabits your body, that is something real. That's not like a migraine headache that you can take Tylenol. If something inhabits your body, it is serious. You're going to feel an entity inside of you. So actual possession of people is rare. Especially today. It was probably more before. But people have so many psychological problems and physical problems and issues, but the real possession of a person is something which Muslims have a way to come out of it. So nushra, or exorcism, is real within Islamic teachings. And we generally use verses from the Quran. There is Ayatul Kursi, which is the 2nd chapter of the Quran, verse 255. Allahu la ilaha illahu al-hayyul qayyum. This verse, very important. There's a chapter called Yasin. Okay, there's a chapter, the last 2 chapters of the Quran, Falaq, Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas. So these chapters can be read in order to protect against evil. And there are certain du'as that you can make. Okay, and I want to just give you 2 of them so you can at least have something if you don't know it already. I transliterated the Arabic because most people, in our new Muslims, you can't read the Arabic, but this is the transliteration, and even if you knew the English. But these du'a are really important, and one is A'udhu bi kalimati Allahi tammat min sharri ma khalaq. Right? A'udhu, repeat after me. A'udhu bi kalimati Allah at-tammat min sharri ma khalaq. So that means I seek refuge with the complete words of Allah from the evil He has created. And the Prophet ﷺ said, we need to read this 3 times after Fajr. In the morning and in the evening, it's good also to read this. This one is really, really powerful. And he said that if you read this dua, it's especially used when you're entering a new house. So if you enter into a new place, you just got a new apartment and you move into a place or you really feel evil, then you read this dua, أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. And that is a powerful thing. And I experienced this myself. Because we lived in Medina, this is back in the 70s, and we had to move into the Bedouin section of Medina. Very simple lifestyle. Running water across the street and, no air conditioner, just a little fan. This is in Arabia. And Medina was known, and is still known, for this type of aqrab. It's a scorpion. So there's a big one. It's a big, dark scorpion. And it's a dangerous one. It's because it's a mountainous area in the desert. To the point where the Prophet ﷺ made dua for this scorpion, to be taken away. So this scorpion is really serious, so you read this dua. And we moved into this Bedouin place. And it's very simple style. If you know the Middle East and Asia, the house, very simple, type of style. And you come in and when you go upstairs, it's like open air. The second floor, the roof is open air because it's hot, and we sleep on the roof most of the time. And the scorpions were there, so I read this dua constantly. And the scorpions came to me every single time. Like they were in the house. And I would look, and there it is going up the wall. So then I'd take my, my slipper and, take it out, because you can kill it if it's in your house. So there's certain creatures that if they're in your house, then you are allowed to take the life of, this creature. You first ask it to leave. And one is the aqrab, another is the snakes. If you have a snake in your house, fortunately in Canada you don't have to worry about snakes in your house, right? But if you lived in some other parts of the world, if you're in the Caribbean, you might have this. It can happen. So snakes in your house, and also lizards. If a lizard comes in your house. And there was a type of lizard that was in Medina, this wazakh, and it makes a sound like that, right? You ever heard a lizard like that? If you lived in, areas, country areas and desert areas, so it makes this noise, right? So then if you hear this noise and you see it, ask it to leave. Why are you asking it? Because the jinn can inhabit the lizard. There's sort of certain animals that jinnis can inhabit. Okay, and so the lizard, you ask it to leave. If not, you take it out. The jinni can also inhabit dogs, especially a black dog with a white spot in the front. This is the one that's been defined in hadith that you've got to watch out for. And I remember there was a movie some years ago called Son of Sam. It was some serial killer in New York who was killing people and whatever. And then they said, finally they found out when they captured him, they said, like, why'd you do this? He said, I was commanded by this dog. It was like commanding me to do this. And they caught this dog, and it was a black dog with a white spot. I don't know whether they knew what they were putting in the movie, but it went right along with, what we had learned about this animal. So these are some of the animals that you have to watch out for, especially when they come inside your house, right? And not necessarily outside. They were running around killing animals. Okay, and in some cultures it can be a slight problem when you're taking the life of an animal, but this is serious. So the second dua, because I wanted to give you some sort of solutions, is the second one, Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru masmihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama' wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. So this one is saying, in the name of Allah, who with his name nothing can harm you in the earth or in the heavens, and he is all hearing and all knowing. Okay? These two dua, Muslims today, and one scholar I heard him, he said, we should all be reading this every night and every morning after Fajr. These two. It's sunnah to read this. Okay? Because there's so much evil around us. Okay, and these are powerful, du'as to be able to read and to understand what it is. Because you're saying in the name of Allah, with His name, nothing can harm you. You see, you're seeking refuge, through the complete words of Allah from the evil He has created. You really believe that Allah can protect you, and you say this. And if there are things around you, then they will leave. Okay, so these are some of the protections that we have against the evil of the jinn. So this is probably the worst form, that this magic can actually take. I want to open up the floor if there's any questions anybody may have concerning this. Yeah.
You mentioned that when you're talking about the jinn and possession, you notice the difference because you feel it, something else inside of you.
Right.
But how would you tell if it's a family member or somebody else, the difference between a mental health and some work of the jinn?
Yeah. Okay, so the question is, how do you know the difference between a mental breakdown of the person or the actually jinn inhabiting? That is a very difficult question because that takes a specialist. So the person who knows how to deal with the jinn, would actually come in and they test. There's certain ways they can test to know whether it's actually there or not. And unfortunately, in most of our cases today, it's superstition. Like I said, the brother who came to me and said he had it in his head, and I asked him, do you work? He has 2 jobs. And I said, okay, do you know the word stress? Right? You got stress, man. There's no jinni in your head. Okay, so people take the easy way out and they try to blame it on the jinn. But it's mental issues, it's health problems. So it really does require a specialist to come in to be able to know the difference between the two. Question, is there a question online?
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. It's remarkable to know that monotheism existed in all traditional cultures. Does that entail that all religions before the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, were revealed religions?
What it means is that, based upon, Allah revealed to us, that we have sent prophets and messengers to every nation and every tribe, that they would worship one God and stay away from false deities. So prophets at some point came to Asia, Africa, Europe, the Americas, everywhere. So, but that does not mean that all the major religions are actually monotheistic. Because you would put Hinduism and Buddhism, but still people have looked at the essence of Hinduism itself. If you go back to the Sanskrit and the early Hinduism, you find Tawheed is there. There is Tawheed. Dr. Zakir Naik did some studies on this as well, on Hinduism and also Buddhism. Because Buddha was a Hindu prince, and he did not want to go with the idols. He was trying to find some way to connect, to the universe. So he was rejecting this. So you can find in pure Buddhism or pure Hinduism, obviously pure Christianity and pure Judaism, you'll find the base is Tawheed. But there are other religions that started off the worship of the sun, the worship of the river, the worship of people. No, those are not monotheistic, in the sense of the revealed religions. But we do believe that prophets did not only come to the Middle East. This is a wrong concept, that it's only the Middle East that had prophets. No, all over the world. No. Any other questions here in the class? Floor is open for any questions anybody may have.
There's another one online.
Okay.
Same person. Does this include traditions in Africa, such as ancestors, etc.?
Yes, so what we're saying is that, in Africa itself, one of the unique things I found that in every culture, there is a concept of God. There's a word for the Great Spirit. But it's not everybody who worships directly to the Great Spirit. So shirk is when you go through something to get to the Creator. And ancestor worship is when you go to your ancestors to go to God. That's shirk. So that's considered, they would be mushrikeen. So that's not what we're talking about. But even in the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the pagan mushrikeen in Mecca, the Arabs at the time, they believed that there was Allah. But they went through gods like Lat and Uzza and Suwa, they went through different idols and different, so-called gods to get to Allah. So that's shirk that we said is the essence. That is something which is wrong. But people don't realize how dangerous even something like magic can be. Okay, and there are different forms. Question?
Yeah, I have a question. I was reading the Surah of the Prophet, speak on him, and there's a story about why it's important to say Bismillah before you eat. Because if you don't say Bismillah over a piece of meat, for example, and you throw the bone away, the shaitan jinn will feed off of that.
Right.
That's what I had read in Martin Ling's biography of the Prophet.
Yeah.
That struck me because it was kind of like a very real way that we are in a relationship with these jinn. Are there other examples?
There are, within seerah literature, there are some traditions that are not really sound reports.
Okay.
It's not like you're reading an authentic hadith.
Okay.
So seerah is like that. So Martin Ling's, who's a good writer and brought a lot of it, but some of the reports that he brought are not necessarily authenticated. So it could happen, but it's not every time that happens that the jinn's going to be there in your house. So it's not necessarily, because those traditions, that one is not really authenticated. But but it is very important. Any other general questions here? Anybody has?
There's another one online.
Yeah, online.
Salam Sheikh, what about the rewards of someone who suffered a lot and lost everything, not being able to finish school, get married, and suffered over 30 years?
Yeah, so the person who suffered, and what happened to them?
He said, what about the rewards of someone who suffered a lot?
Yeah, so there's great rewards, if the person, takes this suffering, as a test from Allah. And the Prophet Ayub, Job, alayhi salam, suffered greatly. Read the life of this, mighty messenger of Allah, who really suffered a lot. And you'll see the great prophets, Ulul Azm min ar-Rusul, Noah, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, and Muhammad, peace be upon them all, they suffered. So if you do it with the right intentions, there is great rewards. And actually can raise your higher level. And we understand that the ones who suffered the most was actually the prophets. And then the righteous people. So suffering in this world is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a test. It doesn't feel good. But sometimes it raises your level. Intention is important. Now, for those who were here last week, we wanted to go on to something slightly, give a little more details. And that is that of the types of magic and shirk. These are forms of shirk. The Prophet ﷺ said that verily iyafa and at-taraq and tiyara are all instances of shirk. So this is an authentic hadith. He said that omens and fortune telling and superstition are all instances of shirk. Now this is something that goes right into the roots of our cultures. Because if you look at iyafa, for instance, iyafa was you have an omen. Like in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to take omens from birds. So as you're going out in a caravan, or you're leaving the city, they look for birds. So if this certain bird, makes, sounds or flies over them, they go back. Or if they see a certain bird, then they will go forward. They love the falcon. The Turks, many people love the falcons, right? You see a falcon coming along, it's like, or an eagle or something good. But if the owl, see the owl in that picture? If the owl is there and it hoots, this one was dangerous. But this is actually shirk. Because the fact that that bird is making a noise or flies over you, the crow, right? The fact that it flies over you does not mean that you're going to have bad luck. In one Muslim culture, they believe that if a certain bird flies over your house, these crows, whatever, that someone's going to die inside the house. There's some strange beliefs that people have with birds. These are omens, right? And so omens can be taken from many different things. Can you think of any omens that people have? In terms of like some things that, gives you, it'll stop you from doing something.
I read
Go ahead.
So you said black cats crossing you?
Yeah, a black cat crossing your path.
Someone told me like if you sweep at night
Yeah.
and you clean it, like you sweep and you put in the dustpan and throw it away, it's like throwing away your luck. Or if something breaks.
Right, or something breaks, right?
Yeah, glass breaks.
Breaks, right, so they take omens from that, right? The black cat crossed your path. That is one where people, walk, some people, they don't want to walk under a ladder,
Yeah.
Yeah, or the umbrella inside.
right? Or opening up an umbrella inside, right? So these type of things, it can be a petty superstition, but if it's stopping you from doing something important, then this is not right. And people will take omens from a lot of different things. Like I was listening to the news and they said, July 14th. If today was Friday, July 13th, Friday the 13th, some people believe that is like an evil day, right? So imagine a Muslim in the house, I can't go to Jumu'ah today because it's Friday the 13th. No, astaghfirullah, this is wrong. This is not right. So these are omens and it's classified as shirk. Another form is taraq, and that is telling fortunes by drawing lines, reading in them. That's your crystal ball, tea leaves, palm readings. I saw it again. I was driving. It was Morningside coming back from Juma, Morningside and Shepherd. On the right side of the road is a big sign, a psychic reader. It's on the road today. So for a person to put up a sign like that, they must be getting business, right? And they're actually advertising how they can, get this. And this is not right. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ata arrafan, fasa'alahu an shay, wa saddaqahu, batala salatuhu arba'ina yawman." Whoever asks a fortune teller something and believes what he said, his prayer is invalid for 40 days. You get no blessing out of the salats. And another hadith it said, فَقَدْ كَفَرَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى Muhammad, that he has committed disbelief if you go to the fortune teller. And so there's different types, there's different forms that it takes palm readers and, tea leaves. It comes in different forms. This is called at-taraq. Okay? And this is the psychic readers now. You say, well, I'm in Canada. Canada's a very secular country. But this is Canada's, best place. It's called Psychic Toronto. This is an ad from a newspaper. Canada's best psychics reading guide. So it says Canada's best place to find answers to your future and insight to life, love, work, help, making your life happier and fulfilling. What are the types in Toronto now? I'm not talking about in Haiti, voodoo in Haiti, right? I'm not talking about, this is here. At Psychic Toronto, you can find guidance and advice or answers to all burning questions about your life. And you will recover from headaches, heartaches, find solutions to problems, concerns, and worries, and benefit from knowing how things will turn out. Learn if your lover is faithful and when you will get out of financial disaster in your life. There's probably a lot of people now that want to go to this, right? Especially if the interest rates rise. This site is for people seeking insight into their livelihood, health, and soul. Look at that. That's shirk. We're not supposed to be involved. Then it says, if you are eager to know when you're going to get promoted or someone jinxed you, or how to get some good luck and how to survive, then you are in the right place. Are you having children soon? Is your teenager out of control, boozing and doing drugs? They're like social workers, right? Psychiatrists, like, do you have enough money to send your son to college? Will you buy a house and close your business deal? Can you afford going on vacation this year? The possible questions that people have are endless and different, but on this site, you will meet psychics and clairvoyants that see the answers and direct you. Look at this one now. Has the recession hit you hard? Maybe now is the time to turn to a fortune teller, clairvoyant medium or psychic. We want to connect you with the best psychics, clairvoyants, tarot card readers, numerologists, and astrologists to answer your question. So astrology is in this too. If you want to learn about different readings, tarot cards, astrology, horoscopes, Kabbalah, or other body, mind, and soul questions, then read Canada's best selection of articles and online. Okay, so this is serious. Now, under magic and shirk also falls astrology. And there's a difference between astronomy and astrology. So the study of the stars, if you're studying the stars for physical reasons, scientific reasons, the North Star, as a guide, then that is science. But if you study the stars in order for power or to know the personality of people, right, this is considered to be a form of disbelief. It's a form of shirk. And astrology is, it's rising back again. And people, they want to know, you want to get married, they say, okay, what's your sign? So are you Leo or Cancer? And the strange thing about it, these things have some power. Because people are affected by tides. We're mostly made up of water. And so the moon and the tides, there's magnetic pulls. So there are some magnetic pulls in the winter and in the summer. And people born during these seasons, may have tendencies. So this is not all completely wrong. But the problem is, when you now base decisions in life, on this thing. This is a problem. And some Muslims I remember when I first came into Islam, and these brothers came from New York City, and so they would say to, Assalamu alaikum, brother, what's your sign? So this is a Muslim, but he wants to know what your sign is. So if you say, my sign is Scorpio, they say, okay, I'll see you later. Now they're going to judge you because of your sign. This is wrong. And it can go into disbelief. Right? But that does not mean that astronomy is wrong. We're going to make a difference between the two. We're going to go to about 8:15 and then, because we started late. Doesn't mean that astronomy itself as a science, is wrong. Okay? We'll go on. We'll finish these and then. Okay, tiyara. We sort of touched on this. This is superstitions based on numbers, objects, animals, and colors. Okay, and there's your black cat. So some people are really afraid of black cats. And there are different other animals that, affect people very heavily. And you'll see in most hotels, I don't know about now, they don't put a 13th floor. Because nobody wants to live on the 13th floor. Okay, because they're afraid of that number. And different cultures have different, Chinese have some very serious issues with certain numbers and colors and positions. Every culture has got this. This is tiyara. And that's considered to be shirk. Okay? And that's the number 13. And we talked about, breaking, a mirror. There it is, causing your bad luck. Okay? And I put a little discussion here about it, that the Romans were the first people to create glass mirrors. They believed that their invention had the potential to steal part of the soul of the person using it. So if a person's reflection was distorted while using a mirror, then their soul would be corrupted and trapped as a result. Fortunately, the Romans believed your soul could be renewed after 7 years. Until that point, though, a person would suffer from bad luck since they did not have the whole healthy soul to fight off evil. So it started with the Romans, but now they just bad luck. So you have good luck signs and you have bad luck things. Okay, but we avoid these. We're not into this. And this can affect your tawheed. It can affect your monotheism. Because you're now starting to fear created things. You're starting to give power to created things. Right? And that will take away from your tawheed. And that is the most important thing, about being a Muslim. Okay, there's walking under the ladder. Right, that is a serious one. Okay, that is there as well. So I want to open up the floor at the end of this period for any general questions people may have, concerning these types of fortune telling, and superstition. Yeah.
It's not really superstition, but I don't like the color red, like to wear the color red like my whole life. I really have a problem with it.
With
I
red?
just don't like it. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's not like superstition though. I don't think it brings bad luck. I just really have a problem.
Well, sometimes, we, as human beings, we have experiences with color, and, there's attraction. Color actually, there's a psychological thing to color. And I went to a conference once, and a Malaysian sister, did an amazing study. And she found out that McDonald's, they studied color. And they found that the two colors that attract people the most are red and gold, yellow. So they made like the golden arches, and you'll see even Coca-Cola using red, because these are actually something that the child, from when you're young, you are more attracted to these things than any other color. They also say, and Allah knows best, that psychologically, that blue color is a color of truth. It's like a solid color and a color of authority and truth. And that's the reason why police wear blue, and authorities wear blue and whatnot. They do this from their psychological studies. We're not going to go into no belief in this, but there is some science behind this in terms of what color means. Because when a child is seeing now, there's certain colors that they'll see first, right? And there's certain attraction, that we do have. The dangerous part is when it starts to affect our belief in Allah, where we fear it or where we are seeking help from it. That's the shirk, right? So the shirk can come in a lot of different things, from fearing. But if a person, as we said with the tamima, right? This amulet, that the Prophet ﷺ used to tear the amulets off the necks of his followers. And said, "Man alaqa tamima wukila ilay." Whoever hangs this amulet, that will be your master. Right? And he would take it off the animals. But it's prevalent in the Muslim world. But now if you wear, again, there's a way out. If you had a necklace that said Allah, or you had something, then if you wear it for beauty's sake, there's nothing wrong. The only thing, you can't take it into the washroom. Okay, so if one person says, okay, I have Ayatul Kursi over my door, or in my room, that's okay, you have calligraphy. If you have it there, and you believe by having Ayatul Kursi on your door, that any evil jinni that comes, this thing on the door is going to punch it. Or it's like a force field. That's shirk. But if you have calligraphy, if you feel evil and you look at this and you recite it, and you believe it, that's okay. It's just when you ascribe power to the object, you see? That's where the shirk comes in. Question?
Is it true you're not allowed to have pictures of people in your house? Not for like idle reasons, but for more like just memories and...
Yeah, that's not in the area of shirk or not shirk. However, we don't, Muslims do not have pictures of people, especially hanging up. And the Prophet ﷺ actually, in one case, Aisha had like a drawing of like a Suleiman's horse. So he took it and he just, they took it down and they made pillows out of it. Pictures, you can have pictures in, a book or something like that, but not hanging up on the wall. Therefore, you'll see, of course, in the masjid is obvious. So anywhere, but even in our homes, we don't have pictures of people or animals to be hanging up, like that, there. But it could be, on something, in a book or wherever, like that. So we avoid, the pictures. And some people, some of the scholars, based on that, when the cameras came, they said cameras are haram, they're forbidden. You can't, because it's a picture, and that's musawwar. That's a person who's making pictures, right? And so they say it's haram. And I remember, like I was saying, I remember this brother, we were traveling on this group, and he was like a real strict, scholar, type of guy. And he's against pictures and everything. Don't take any pictures of me, don't whatever. But he used to look in the mirror and comb his beard and look at his face all the time, right? Like he loved looking at his face in the mirror, right? So I said, okay, brother, do you know that a camera is your mirror image put onto the paper? Okay, now it's going online. But in those days, it's your mirror image. Nobody drew that of you. That's the actual image of you put onto the paper. So if you're against this, then you need to stop looking in the mirror. That's different than somebody doing a portrait. That would be different. That could be musawwar. Because the Prophet ﷺ said if a person's trying to create life, they're trying to draw, like they say, it's so lifelike and whatever, then he will be asked on the Day of Judgment to put life into this. And if he cannot do it, he'll be thrown in the fire. And idol worship, in many cases, we found in our traditions, it began with just a picture. Maybe there was a famous person in a community, and when that person died, they wanted to remember the person, next generation. So they said, draw a picture of him. So they drew a picture. And then next generation said, okay, what did his body look like? So can you make like a sort of a statue? So when the next generation came, they started worshiping the statue. So a lot of idol worship comes from stories. Krishna and Shiva, these are characters. They're princes, they're characters. And then it comes into an idol form, you see? So we avoid idolatry under all circumstances to protect ourselves. We'll come up for the last questions now.
Yeah, going online.
Yeah.
In our current situation here in the West, there have been scientific explanations to address jinn possessions, such as drug-induced psychosis or post-traumatic stress.
Right.
Should we take these two into consideration when conversing about jinns? Better yet, have an integrative model that factors in both in treatments.
Yes, so this is a scientific question based upon, like what scientists are saying that is drug-induced. When the jinn comes in a person, they say, no, it's something drug-induced, psychological problem. This is the position that the Protestant church has been taking. They don't have exorcists anymore. They go to the psychiatry and the science and they try to get an explanation there. But there are some cases where there's no science in this. There's something in that person. Okay, and so we don't look at it in a superstitious way, but it can be a reality. So we need to be ready if the reality strikes us. Okay, so on a high level, we need to look at it. Definitely, most of our problems are psychological problems, psychiatric. But there are some cases not psychiatric. This is beyond. This is going in another realm. Okay, any other final questions anybody has? Coming to a close.
Question here.
Okay.
So last one. Why are shrines accepted in Sunni Islam?
Why are shrines accepted in Sunni Islam? Okay, shrines are not accepted in Sunni Islam. There are people who have gone away from the Sunnah, and and we're going to deal with this, they have built shrines around the graves of their saints. So they are actually not following the Sunnah. They're not following the way of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, although they came from that, but their cultures have come into it. People come into Islam from Hinduism, from Buddhism, even Christians had Jesus Christ, whatnot. And then they come into Islam and they sort of want to impose, they still need that image type thing. So they put that onto the graves of saints and they build shrines. But this, and we'll be going into this is actually not permitted in Islam, and it can be a form of shirk if the person is praying to the saints. So they came out of Sunni Islam, And this is, so there's no difference saying Sunni, Shia, this could be anybody, right? But in this case, this is not according to the way of the Quran or the way of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Right? That's our basis. All the cultural things that came afterwards are subject to the basis that comes from the book and the way of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So this is another level we've gone, in dealing with shirk. And we will be continuing on to other forms. There's some very serious issues that we want to deal with that could be affecting you as a new Muslim, or could be affecting you as a Muslim who's reviving their faith. So continue along with us. If you are within the Toronto area, you can come to 1630 Nielsen Road. This is, in Toronto, Scarborough area. Come to us. We have a live gathering, also the New Muslim Corner, and that will be for the rest of our period, for the rest of the evening. So for those who were with us online, we leave you in peace. May Allah, give us all, a safe journey home. And inshallah, we'll see you again next week. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi